Afghanistan's rise in the world cricket has been nothing short of extraordinary. From producing world class spinners to becoming a staple in the IPL, they have captured the hearts of cricket fans worldwide.
But with no ICC trophy in their cabinet yet, the big question is how long will it take for Afghanistan to clinch their first ICC title? Will their passion and talent be enough to overcome political turmoil and infrastructural challenges?
Join us as we gaze into the future and predict Afghanistan's breakthrough moment on the global stage.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Reverse Sweep Show. As ever, this is your host Suyash, and joining me back from a break is AB. How's it going, AB? How are things at your end?
Hi, SS. Things are now finally settling down. It had been a up and down kind of a week for me, a couple of weeks for me. Hectic with work and a lot of things going on even in the personal life front, but it's always good to be back on the pod. And thanks for taking care of the pod last week, SS. How are things at your end?
Yeah, I don't didn't want to look too much into the fantasy game that we are playing with the draft 11. So it was good that I could record something by myself into a topic that I'm really interested in two red balls in test cricket from each end. We'll link the episode in the show notes for whoever hasn't listened to it. But today we have also an interesting topic looking forward rather than looking back. Um, it might be interesting to a lot of viewers that we are going a bit beyond India-centric content over here. So, AB, for the listeners, what are we going to discuss today?
I will get to that SS, but since you mentioned about the fantasy game, I need to brag about it before. So just an
I think
update
you have
for
done
all.
enough bragging. You have already done. You don't need to do any more.
I'm not going to step back, SS. I'm going to brag as much as I can. So, just for everyone listening in, an update from the second test match also, SS. I won the fantasy game by what, 100 points or something, right? I was at around
Yeah.
900, you were at 800. So, it's 2-0 in my score. Anyways, now coming back to the topic for today, as all of you know, we always look back at a past event, historical event, and then dissect and analyze what could have happened. We thought this time we'll change things up. Instead of going back into the past, we look into the future. And as you also heard in the hook of the episode, we are looking at a team which has had a meteoric rise in global cricket, Afghanistan. And the thing that we are trying to evaluate, or rather imagine, is when can they win their first ICC tournament? So, SS, talking about Afghanistan, can you quickly tell all our listeners how the team has grown over the years?
Yeah, this is one team that we have seen grow and in front of our own conscious memory, per se. Sri Lanka was a bit older. Bangladesh keeps going up and down, fading, so we never know whether they are going up or down. So Afghanistan has been quite steady and steadily improving. They became an ICC member in 2001, and a full membership came in mid 2000s when cricket started opening up, and ICC had this onus of like getting more members, at least at the associate level. But in the span of 5 years, they became like an elite level test playing nation and progressing from level five. So it was quite a steep rise for them. And they have been regular participants in the premier ICC event, which is the ICC ODI World Cup. They've played in 2015 in down under. They won only one game against Scotland, but people could already see that this is a side, given the backing, they would do well because they're talented cricketers coming through the system. 2019 wasn't that great. They lost all their games playing in England, but they gave good fight in a couple of games and they were doing well in other formats already. But 2023 World Cup that took place in India, they really came to the fore. They won against Pakistan, they beat England, they beat Sri Lanka, they beat Netherlands. And if not for Maxwell, they could have knocked out Australia and we would have won the 2023 World Cup as well. And they were quite unlucky that they couldn't reach the semi-finals in there as well. But I believe, AB, more than that, you were a big fan of them in the T20 World Cup, especially the 2024.
Yeah, I mean, they have been playing T20 World Cup since 2012. And they have won games here and there, but 2024 World Cup was the first big splash that they made in this format. They were able to defeat Australia, Bangladesh, New Zealand, and they made it to the semifinals. Of course, they didn't compete well in the semifinals, but then for a team like Afghanistan to make it to the knockout stage in an ICC tournament in itself is a huge achievement.
And a lot of people before the semifinals were saying that it's not completely out of the realm that Afghanistan beat South Africa because of South Africa's history in the semifinals. Afghanistan could have been in the finals.
True, and that is where we spoke about how Afghanistan has evolved from the initial stages to actually making it big in a World Cup tournament. But SS, my question to you: what makes a championship team? What are the factors that you look at in a championship team?
Yeah, there's so many factors. I mean, at a broader level, you not only look on the pitch, but also off the pitch, things like looking at the board and how the cricket is doing in terms of the public. But I want to first focus on the team aspect. And in team aspect, also, there are so many sub points over here. So first of all, it's all about the players. Do you have the players coming from the system and who are currently already ripe enough to compete at the highest level? So that is really important. You also have the right amount of mix between experienced players plus the young players because you need to keep evolving as a team. And then bench strength because you're now playing three formats. Your players play a lot of franchise cricket as well. Not everyone will be fit and available. And also there are so many injuries happening because of so much cricket. So you need to have proper bench strength in order to compete in a series. You might win a game or here and there, but if you want to have bigger aspirations to win a series, to go deep into ICC tournaments, you need to have that bench strength as well. And then ultimately, all this is supported by a good domestic structure from where your right amount of coaching helps to improve the players, uh, keep up to how the game is evolving around the world. For example, mystery spin was a feature at some point of time. Now there's leg spin, but then there is now this concept of hitting versus batting. You need to keep evolving, and domestic structure helps to do that. So we will go through all these points. We can start off with the skilled players, and I can share my perspective first. I believe this current Afghanistan team has got one of the most skillful players in world cricket. They have got their unique skill set, especially when it comes to spin bowling. Rashid Khan being at the forefront of it, but you also have Noor Ahmed and Mujib. These are really good spin bowlers as well. But now you can also see some good all-round batting options as well. Umar Zai, Mohammad Nabi has always been there. So I think on skill element, I rate them really good. I think I will rate them an 8 out of 10 when it comes to pure skill players who can take the match away if they have a good day and they've got good foundations around it. What do you think about skilled players in Afghanistan?
So Afghanistan, I feel until a couple of years back, they had just two or three high-skilled players like Rashid Khan, Mohammad Nabi, and the role players that they had weren't skilled enough. But now, in the last 2 3 years, I think they have started getting in those players as well who are highly skilled. They have a few good pace bowlers, Fazal Haq Faruqi. They have
Yeah.
batters like Gurbaz who can actually take the attack to the opposition. So I feel on the skill level they are increasing. I would not rate them as high as 8. I would still say they are around 7 on 10 because the other
Hmm.
teams like India, Australia, England, even South Africa, they are much higher on the skill level. So relatively, I would say that Afghanistan is a 7 on 10.
Hmm.
So moving to the next factor, as you mentioned, team combination. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
They are amidst the golden generation. Now, golden generation is something that sometimes is understandable retrospectively. Now we look back at Lanka and their 96 exploits and we feel that it was a golden generation. Nobody in 96 would have said that it was a golden generation because there was an underdog story. But and when you look at the Bangladesh example, you feel that was there ever a golden generation and something like that. I think Afghanistan, because they have done well, you see a lot of cricket and a lot of Afghanistan cricketers playing around the world. You feel that they have at least five or six of these players that are generational in a way. So I do feel they have this golden generation I still feel in order to really compete at the highest level, their batting needs to improve a lot, especially hitting. But I feel that they have good optimal batters, spinners, and fast bowlers. So I will give them a 7 on 10 when it comes to team combination. There are still some gaps they would need to fill in, especially now Nabi is going to retire after Champions Trophy as well. That's going to be a big hole in terms of leadership as well. So I think on team combination they will need to find a spin bowling all rounder again, not rely totally on Rashid. So 7 on 10 for me.
I feel team combination is one thing which is the toughest for any team to nail down in world cricket right now, specifically given how the game is evolving. In recent times, even India, with all the strength of domestic structure and star power, even India struggles with that perfect team combination. And a lot of that is to do with having those all-rounders in place who are world class, having some elite batters and bowlers on team combination. And I think Afghanistan for me ranks a bit lower, and they would be at
Hmm.
around 5 on 10, because they are too dependent upon their star players. And if their batting doesn't fire, if the top order doesn't fire, if Gurbaz doesn't play, then they struggle with the batting. And similarly, if say Rashid Khan has an off day, they would also struggle with the bowling. And plus, to take the game deep and to win games for them, they don't have those real match winners. So they need a lot of things to go their way to be able to win the big matches. When we talk specifically about the team combinations, I would say there are 5 on 10.
Coming to experience, I feel it will generally trend in the upward direction. Of course, if you have got a generation of players at the same age and they retire altogether, then it will tend to go downwards. Nabi, as I mentioned, would be a big loss after the Champions Trophy. He decided to play a Champions Trophy because he's never played one. He was about to retire after the World Cup, the T20 one. Uh, I feel this is a gap for them, ability to perform under pressure. We saw it in the semi-finals. We have seen it in the Asia Cup final as well. I think once they reached, um, or at least the deep stages there. I would give them a 5 on 10. It will improve, but right now, when we talk in context of going really deep and winning an ICC trophy, they are not there. I'm being really laissez-faire with my points, but I will give them a 5 on 10 when it comes to experience. They're gaining a lot playing franchise cricket, but that is not equivalent to going deep in ICC events.
Personally, I think experience wise, one thing which works in favor of Afghanistan is the sheer amount of experience that the players get across international leagues.
Yes.
So they definitely get that experience of playing against elite teams and also playing in knockout matches there. But as a unit of Afghanistan cricket, they don't have as much experience of playing knockout matches and playing those big matches. And we saw that in the recent match. On a lighter note, I do feel that they are gaining a bit of situational awareness. We saw that in the match versus Australia in the 24 World Cup with Gulbadin Nair pulling out his hamstring when the match was on the line.
Yes. That was such a great watch. Amazing.
Yeah, but
I
on a more
credit some
serious
English brain there. Jonathan Trott had a role to play there, but it was amazing that they pulled it off.
yeah, but on the experience bit, I would say they are a 6 on 10, majorly because of the experience from domestic leagues.
Yeah. Coming to bench strength, I feel again it's trending upwards, but you mentioned it as part of team combination as well. If Rashid or Mohammad Nabi or Gurbaz or Omarzai, you are still reliant on them. And if they sit out of a format, if they sit out of a series, maybe against Zimbabwe also, and then you have their bench players playing, I will still say Zimbabwe will compete really well with Afghanistan. They don't have that strength still. They have enough players that are coming in, but having experience enough to compete against top sides in big tournaments that lack that. I will give them a 4 on 10 on bench strength.
On this point, SS, I totally agree with you. Bench strength is something which has to be their one big weakness, and I would also give them a 4 on 10 for very much the same reasons that you mentioned. And that takes us to the next point as well, which is domestic structure. What do you think is the score that you would give to them on their domestic structure?
Yeah, it's important to think historically on this as well. I mean, growth of cricket in Afghanistan has been under Pakistani aegis. I mean, they used to have camps. A lot of Afghanistan refugees in Pakistan during Taliban regime started playing cricket, started getting more popular. Taliban had banned the sport back when they had the previous regime, not this one. So the domestic structure hasn't been fairly new. Unlike when we look at Sri Lanka's example, Sri Lanka played their first international match in the ODI World Cup of 1975, but you had domestic cricket going on from 1926. So they had still, and Sri Lanka has very strong school cricket system. A lot of cricketers like Sangakkara have come through that system, which, and same for Zimbabwe as well, same for South Africa. It isn't the case with Afghanistan. It's street cricket, it's gully cricket, it's called tape ball cricket, which is very popular in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Uh, they still don't play international matches at home. Their domestic tournaments have only recently been recognized by ICC. They play 25 over tournaments and all. I don't think their domestic cricket is up there with the world's best. And in order to have sustained success or even that level of success that we are talking about in ICC events, it's far from there. They have overachieved, I would say, basis the tournaments that they take part in Pakistan or some of the stuff that go out in the A-level tours that happen. And ICC has a big role to play in that. But on that, again, I will give them 4 on 10. I think the domestic structure needs to evolve. And I think that will segue a bit deeper into some of the other stuff that we are going to discuss about a region and the stability and economy and all that per se. Uh, but yeah, I mean, structure needs to be more robust. So 4 on 10 for me.
I totally agree with all the points that you mentioned, SS, but I feel you are a bit too kind with the points that you have given to them, because domestic structure in Afghanistan for cricket is at best broken or hardly existent, right? Very patchy
Yeah,
domestic structure. And to me, it's still quite a big surprise the kind of talent pool that they are able to generate, the kind of spinners that are coming
yeah,
up. To a great
yeah.
extent, that's got to do with Rashid
I
Khan's
count
emergence.
tape ball cricket, which is so popular in Pakistan and Afghanistan, is also an informal structure. So I give some points for them.
Yeah, for me, I would say it's 2 on 10. I won't give them
Mm.
more points than that for domestic structure. So we spoke about team. Then there are a few more aspects that we want to talk about when we talk about a championship team, right? It's not just a team, but also the board, which plays a huge part in that. So what
Yeah,
do you
board
think? Like
recognizes.
what?
Yeah, yeah, board talks to other boards, creates a lot of series, and they also have a role to play in the previous point we discussed, which was about domestic competition. And currently, it's the big three taking the big slices, and you have the Pakistan, South Africa, and Lanka of the world. Afghanistan, I believe, still survives a lot on the big boards also contributing to them, and not just ICC. They don't have revenues of themselves as well because people sometimes don't play a series against them. They don't play at home, so they have to rely on Pakistan and India to help them out there. I think financial strength is really low. It's not saying that it's not trending in the right direction. I think it's going to improve, but we don't know because of some of the other political factors that we are going to discuss and the intervention that happens. I give them a 3 on 10 on this one.
True. I mean, directionally, totally understand where you're coming from, and financial strength is definitely very weak. uh, of course, held by a lot of other boards and ICC. I would say a 3 again, just because of the kind of help that they get from other boards around the world. And a big part when we talk about the board is also the political stability that the board is operating in. And Afghanistan, we know, is known for its instability. What are your thoughts about that, SS?
Yeah, we look at Zimbabwe's example, we look at Kenya's example, both decent enough teams, Zimbabwe more than a decent level team, and then Mugabe comes in and then the cricket gets destroyed over there. Uh, Kenya, nowhere to be seen. 2003 ODI World Cup semi-finalist. They got the advantage of being a political pariah in the world, but in the longer run, it has been complete detriment to them. They're nowhere to be seen now. Uh, Taliban has banned cricket before. in the country. So there's always this thing that what can happen. Recently saw a lot of cricketers writing open letters to Taliban government about women education and women cricket and all that. So it's a biggest what if about Afghanistan cricket is the political instability there. Or rather, we should call it's political stability, but not of a regime who is supportive in the past about these things. So we don't know. So it's no longer political instability. It's about this current regime. Uh, I would say this will continue to have an impact because the longer you go without having formalized structure and world-class training, and you might find not coaches and training sessions not happening because of this. I would give them a 2 on 10 on this one.
Yeah, again, uh, on the similar lines, I feel extremely unstable regime in Afghanistan. And the points that you mentioned, SS, about Zimbabwe, I still remember back in the 90s when I started watching cricket, India Zimbabwe matches used to be so competitive. And then Zimbabwe just went off the cricketing map.
Yeah,
And there's a similar challenge with Afghanistan. You never know what happens in the country and what impact that might have on their cricket. So definitely a very volatile environment for them. But again, also equally surprising how they have actually grown their cricket in that environment. I feel it
yeah,
was also before the Taliban rule that started a couple of years, 3 years back, when Afghanistan had some form of stability, and that is where cricket actually thrived in the country.
yeah,
And it's equally surprising how they have been able to grow it under the Taliban rule right now. But let's see what happens in the future. And on the political stability point, I will also give them a 2 on 10. I think that's what you got to give them. The next point, SS, is about global cricketing ties. They don't play a lot of bilaterals, right? At least not with the elite teams.
yeah. We saw the recent case of Australia and pressure put on them that they should play, but they're not playing. Uh, they've got a big Champions Trophy coming. They've qualified as a top 8 country there, but in preparation, they are playing against the usual suspects. They're playing a full-blown tour of Zimbabwe. They're playing some hot games against Pakistan. They don't play against India, England, Australia, even South Africa for that matter. I think this will change at some point, but it's been really slow growth. I would have expected it to be picked up by now. So it's probably a function of not having like home stadium, but there is still some sense of about the Taliban rule and how the West looks at it. And Australia and New Zealand are also counted as West when it comes to these kind of things. Uh, they need to grow this because they need regular cricket. You need A-level tours to also happen. You require under 19 tours that to also happen. I think they're still very Asia-centric and Zimbabwe and Kenya-centric when it comes to these kind of things. So again, a 3 on 10 on this one.
I resonate with the thoughts on that. As I feel for a team to reach that elite level, they do need to have bilaterals against the other top teams of the world. They don't play against England, India, Australia until it's a world championship. So I feel they still play a lot of bilateral series and tournaments, even if it's against teams like Zimbabwe, Kenya. So
Yeah,
I would give
yeah.
them 5 on 10 for that.
I mean, look at India's example. I mean, it's a bad example in this context, but look at the confidence the under 19 cricketers now have. They have so many India A-level tours. They go to Australia, they go to England to tour. So when Shubman Gill or Yashasvi Jaiswal, I mean, we are talking about really elite cricketers, but still decent enough example. They have played in Australia before, so they have the confidence. Look at the last Australia tour when we had so many injuries. A lot of these bowlers had played in Australia before. And if you don't get that exposure in your formative years as a cricketer, it will come to bite you, and then the time flies away, and then you don't have the enough experience to do to create impact. But let's also talk about outside the fence. I mean, we have this big fandom of cricket in Asian countries, and Afghanistan is not far away from it. The fans' passion and interest in the game. What do you think about that?
I feel Afghanistanis are passionate cricket viewers. I think that is one place where Afghanistan doesn't lack, even if there's a World Cup. I remember even the World Cup that happened in India, Afghanistan matches so
A
many
lot of them
people.
traveling.
Yeah, and you could actually see their passion on the ground.
I was in the stadium to watch Afghanistan versus Netherlands in Lucknow, and there were so many of them traveling. There were like handful of Dutch fans, but Afghanistanis were there, and they are loved as a team itself, as neutrals as well. Everyone likes Afghan Jalebi, so even the Indian fans were there singing and joining in the chorus in terms of applauding. Rashid Khan is such a big fan of players. Players are such big fans of him because of the IPL exploits. So when it comes to fans from Afghanistan and across, people like watching them.
Yeah, I would in fact say it's a 9 on 10 for them. That is their biggest strength right now, which
Yeah.
is how popular cricket is in the country. What about you, SS? What score will you
Yeah,
give?
I will put an 8 on 10 just because I still feel that the ability to spend on cricket, especially with Taliban crankling down, it might reduce going in the future, but I think 8 on 10 for me as well.
Okay, so we talk about fans and their passion, but then when we talk about the overall economy of cricket in the country, we also have to talk about their ability to spend on cricket. What do you think about that?
I think like many Asian countries, it becomes like off-ground experience more than in-ground experience. Like Indians also, okay, there are a lot of Indians living outside, like Pakistani, Sri Lankans, so they go and watch cricket, but it mostly watching on television, so broadcast rights. I know Etisalat, which is a huge UAE telecommunications provider, sponsors a lot of their events and everything, so there is some money coming in. But and broadcast is free to air and everything, so people don't. But I don't see them traveling to long places unless until they are migrants who are living in those kind of countries. So on that front, I will give them a 5 on 10.
Yeah, likewise, I think it's not the highest amount of spend that Afghanistanis can do on cricket. The entire structure around that is not as strong as say it is in India, because in India it's like an open supply of money when it comes to cricket.
And
So
and also you have games happening in your country, and Afghanistan don't play at home.
yeah, and for that reason, I give it a 3 on 10.
Yeah.
But then another point that is very important is the global fandom and demand for Afghanistan players. In this IPL, there are more Afghanistanis playing than even Sri Lankan cricketers or Bangladeshi cricketers, and of course, more than
Yeah.
Pakistani cricketers. So,
Yeah.
what's your take on that? How does
And
Afghanistan
it's not
score?
limited to IPL, right? They are playing in Big Bash as well. They are playing in CPL as well. And I think the top ones are also playing in the 100. So it's a big demand, especially of their spinners, but more and more opening up to fast bowlers and batsmen as well. Omar Zai is very exciting. You have Fazal Haq Farooqi, Naveenul Haq. I'm an LSG fan, so he was there. So I think they're doing very well, and it will only keep increasing because there's a lot of migrant population as well as we mentioned outside. So you have that attraction, and they're really high on skill set. I gave them a very high 8 on 10 as well. So that resonates with that why franchises are looking for them. I gave them a 7 on 10 on this one as well.
Okay, I think the highest demand for players globally is probably England, followed by, you can say, Australia, then West Indies, South Africa.
We don't count India because Indian players can't play.
Can't play. They can't play outside, and I feel Afghanistan would probably be around 8 on 10 on this, because so many Afghanistan players play in the leagues outside, and that is probably
Yeah.
their primary cricket that they play. I mean, even more
Yeah,
than
and that's a
cricket in the
primary
world.
cricket in which they're really good at, which is T20. And that's why they get a lot of opportunities outside.
Absolutely. And as is with that, I think we have completed all the factors that we wanted to assess Afghanistan on. I will
Yeah.
quickly tell you what the score is, and honestly, I expected our scores to be very close, and they are. My average score is 4.9 on 10. Your average score is 5.1 on 10. So
Hmm.
fairly close, but then that gives a sense of where Afghanistan is right now in their readiness to be a championship team.
Yeah,
But then this podcast is not just about numbers and analytics. It's also about a bit of imagination, a bit of hypothetical thinking.
absolutely.
So, what do you think about that? I mean, if we keep numbers aside, what do you think? How does Afghanistan fare right now? Do you think in the history there have been some teams which have been able to do that? What we are looking at Afghanistan for? What's your take?
I mean, historically speaking, cricket has been slow growth for in terms of achieving success. And it's pretty much analogous to other team sports as well. You can't imagine an Asian team to suddenly win a FIFA World Cup. You can't imagine an African team to win a hockey World Cup. So similarly, you just can't imagine somebody just rising out of nowhere and winning cricket World Cups as well. Closest we can think of was Sri Lanka. But as we said, they had domestic structure going back into the 1920s. They first played ODIs in 75, Test status in 81. They win the World Cup in 96. Now looking back, golden generation, but it was a big underdog story. Similarly with India as well. Nobody expected them to win in 83, but cricket had been big part or at least growing part of Indian culture for 50 years. And then you also look at New Zealand's example. They played their first test match in 1930, but took them 26 years to win a test match. Now, the frequency of cricket has increased, frequencies of ICC events have increased, so there is more chances for a team to succeed because of so many events that a black swan event can happen and suddenly a team does an upset and wins a tournament. They're on the right track, but essentially, I still feel there are some counter examples as well. You just can't rely on these positive experiences. You also have like Bangladesh example, which is also one of the countries that we have seen with conscious memory in front of us. It's been 25 to 30 years of Bangladesh playing top tier cricket. How many ICC events have they won? Zero. How many of Asia Cup they have won? Probably zero as well. How many emerging Asia Cup? They just won one, I think, this week against India. And despite having a big catchment area, relatively more political stability, relatively more financial strength, a lot of bench strength cricketers as well, they are winning test series away to Pakistan. They have got good pace bowling attack. They've got historically in the last 10 years, very good batsmen, very good slow left armers, but they still are not able to crack ICC events. You can attach that to the Bangladesh psyche and how they approach big matches, but it's not so easy. You have everything and then you can't win a World Cup. Ask South Africa. They just
Absolutely.
can't win any ICC events. Despite, I'm not saying winning an ICC tournament is a testament of success. Ask Rohit Sharma. He waited for a long time. Ask Virat Kohli. You can't say they weren't successful. So it takes a lot of things to fall into place to win an ICC trophy. My hot take is before I pass it to you is that they are trending in the right direction. I would give them, let's say, a 50 to 70% chance of winning an ICC event before 2040. That so next 15 years. And I believe the format that they are going to do well is not T20 World Cup somehow. That's my hot take. I think they can do very well in Champions Trophy. We can talk more about it later on why I think so, but I pass it to you so that you can share your thought on the hypothetical side of of Afghanistan doing well in ICC events.
One point which you touched upon, SS, and which excites me really about Afghanistan and their trajectory that they are on right now is looking at Sri Lanka's trajectory. And there are so
Yeah.
many parallels that we can draw, and we talked about so many factors earlier, talking about political instability. Sri Lanka was going through such a lot of turmoil, both political and social, back in the 1990s, and still they were able to pull off a World Cup win. So that is something which is very similar to what Afghanistan is going through right now. You look at rapid growth in a short span, it's again similar. Sri Lanka wasn't a cricketing powerhouse in the 90s, early 90s, and in the 80s, but then they were able to pull up with such a great group of players and then win a World Cup. Similar is the case with Afghanistan. Dependence on limited infrastructure, domestic cricket wasn't as strong. I mean, of course, they had domestic cricket in some shape or form since the 1920s, as we spoke about earlier, but just the strength of that domestic structure probably wasn't as strong and as big as it was in some of the other countries like England or Australia or even India for that matter. Then there were some players who were absolute geniuses in that 96 Sri Lankan team. You had Arvinda De
Yeah.
Silva. You still remember those innings that he played in the semifinals and finals.
And a charismatic captain, Ranatunga,
Ranatunga.
you had Romesh, Kaluvitrana, and Jayasuriya, Muralidharan. Such a good team.
Yeah, so they had some players who were absolute geniuses of the game. And you have that similar thing going on with the current Afghanistan team as well. Rashid Khan, an absolute genius, has kind of transformed how spin bowling is in T20s. So I do feel that there are so many parallels to be drawn between the 96 Sri Lanka team and the current team of Afghanistan. And that is what excites me so much and gives me hope that Afghanistan can actually pull off something which is miraculous. And honestly, I feel I would give them a chance of 50%. I think it's still
Hmm.
50-50 if they can win an ICC
Yeah.
tournament by 2040. Majorly because of all the variabilities that you see around political instability and all. If all of those things don't impact, Afghanistan, I think, is on the right trajectory and they should be able to win. But then that is one thing which holds them back.
Hmm. I also feel that a competition which will allow upsets to happen, things have to go in their favor. You need certain teams to be below their optimized performance levels. You need helpful pitches and conditions, and you need some luck with the tosses or the boundaries. They need a lot of fact. With top countries, you don't need that luck factor. I mean, that much. But with them, you need it. It can fall into a knockout level tournament, I feel. Whenever there are group stages involved, which ICC does a lot, ICC doesn't want to lose the revenues of India, Australia, and England not reaching the latter stages. They put India and Pakistan in the same group always. So they milk up the groupings, they milk up the so that the top teams always reach the latter stages. But if there is a knockout tournament where there's a lot of variability, maybe they will do well. Um, which is hard to do in group-based tournaments, even T20 World Cup, which they reached the semifinals, which is kudos to them. So I always feel that a tournament which will have unsettled teams and probably a smaller number of countries taking part, they will have more decent chance than some, let's say, other tournaments. Let's say WTC is completely out of the realm for them. ODI World Cup, I still feel they are far away because play pretty much the same format as ICC has been playing the last two World Cups, and I don't think they will reach there. But T20 World Cup, maybe Champions Trophy, they can do better.
I think that's a real hot take on your side, as is talking about Champions Trophy, because I always felt Afghanistan as a team is best suited for T20 World Cup
Yeah,
because of the kind of experience that their players have across
yeah,
T20 leagues around the world. I feel they are intuitively best at T20 cricket.
yeah,
And even as a team, they get around it the best. Plus, shorter format, more variabilities thrown into the mix.
yeah.
A 2 over period can change the game on its head. So I feel Afghanistan has a better chance of competing in T20 matches against elite teams like India, Australia, England, South Africa. So I feel if they have to win an ICC championship, that will be T20 World Cup.
I will tell you why I think Champions Trophy is better for them. I know intuitively T20 is something that they've had historical success and people would think, but T20 World Cup, you still have to win 6 or 7 games, I think, to win a T20 World Cup. And teams are getting again evolving of T20 cricket. A lot of teams are playing, a lot of cricketers are playing, and I don't think they still have the infra and analytics and the nows. I think Jonathan Trott has done an excellent job in the last 2.5 years, but how long will he be there? I think West Indies were ahead of the curve. They won a couple of World Cups. People have caught on to them. They are now playing same level of cricket. England was doing pretty well. Now India have caught up with it. So I think T20 is right now getting at the top level of that we want to achieve success in this, and I think it will be harder for them to break that ceiling now because all teams are taking those competitions very seriously. Champions Trophy is very interesting. If it continues to happen, it will always fall between the ODI World Cups. It's time where teams transition. They are trying to discover the best format. You will always have only 8 teams competing in it. So effectively, if you are having two groups of 4 teams each, you have to win 4 games to win the ICC Champions Trophy. You can win 2 games in your group. You qualify for the semifinals. Then it's down to a two team. I mean, you can argue that all ICC events are like 2 game tournament for the top nations like India, Australia. We always expect India to reach the semifinals, and the real tournament begins then. But imagine India in a transition state, which is anyways happening in Test cricket. It'll continue to happen throughout white ball cricket as well. Australia will go through that as well. So it could open the door for Afghanistan because I think after India and Australia, things open up and upsets happen. And if you get helpful conditions of a Champions Trophy happening in Sri Lanka and somehow they squeeze through the semifinals, anything can happen. That's why, because of the nature of when Champions Trophy happen, how seriously bolds take, You could also have an event India pulling out of a Champions Trophy. I know ICC wouldn't ever let that happen. They will find a solution, but Pakistan could pull out, for example. A lot of things can happen. So if there are three or four Champions Trophy happening in the next 15 years, I think it's a decent enough chance Afghanistan can do really well and probably win one.
Yeah, and talking about Champions Trophy, a team that has just not been able to crack the World Cups, South Africa has actually a Champions Trophy win. So
West Indies won a Champions Trophy in 2004 as well. Australia took the longest time to win a Champions Trophy, despite winning like 15 ODIs sometimes at a stretch. They couldn't win a Champions Trophy in 2000 till 2009, I think, when Watson made hundreds in semi-finals and finals, the one that was held in South Africa. I remember the Champions Trophy that was held in India in 2006. India did not even reach the semi-finals. There was a final between Australia and West Indies. So things sometimes it's a very quirky tournament, and I give that element of surprise that will come with it. That Afghanistan can do wonders there.
okay, so with all that we have discussed, just as I'll put you on the spot. When do you think Afghanistan wins their first ICC tournament?
Okay, let's go for it then. When are the Champions Trophy scheduled to happen? They happen every 4 years, right? So 2025. Okay, I give 2037 that they win the Champions Trophy.
Great. For me, I take Sri Lanka's example as a yardstick. Sri Lanka first played the ODI World Cup in 1975. That was the first
Yeah.
tournament, first ODI World Cup, and it took them 20 years to win their first World Cup in '96. Actually, 21 years. Going by the same example, Afghanistan played their first World Cup in 2012. That was a T20 World Cup. So if I extrapolate it, it will be around 2033.
Mm.
I don't think Afghanistan 2033 seems way too close right now.
Especially that you give lesser probability
Yeah,
to them than
exactly.
I did.
So I'll probably add 6 more years. So right
Uh,
around 2039, 2040, I would say that's when they win their
but
first.
we are still being really optimistic. I mean, a lot of people that you ask, considering how cricket is polarized, they would say there's no chance a non-top three team wins any ICC tournament in near future, and 15 years is near future when we think about world events. So I think we are giving a lot of kudos to Afghanistan cricket. Fantastic. Then this was a forward-looking episode on Afghanistan cricket and their chances of succeeding at ICC events. It's kind of a wrap-up of 2024 as well, considering they did so well in the T20 World Cup. Spread the word on this episode if you're interested to learn a bit more about Afghanistan cricket. We'll be back with another episode, hopefully before the end of the year. And then we hope to record a hot take episode very soon as well. So thank you for listening in. We are available on all podcasting platforms. All the relevant links will be in the show notes. Take care. Bye bye. And if you're celebrating Christmas, Merry Christmas.